So, yes, since we're not meeting in person, so we can't really do much with the lab today. I think there's plenty of material for the first lab practical. So if you did the lab six, well, no one held up their lab six review sheet, so I assume no one did it. But you don't have to worry about the integumentary lab, which is lab six. That's what I had planned for today, along with a brief review. Don't worry about that material. So you can ignore lab six, the integumentary lab. Um, we'll cover it all in lecture anyway. So uh, yeah, it's actually kind of good timing for me not being able to be there. So don't worry about lab six. The material that will be on the lab practical will be the lab exercises 1 and 2. So that's the kind of general terminology for anatomy, the mapping of the human body, the body cavities, the body planes, the abdominal regions, and then also the organ systems. So that's lab 2. I have a study guide that I will post after I end this meeting. So there will be a study guide for the lab practical. The lab practical is next week, in case you didn't realize that. Okay, so labs 1 and 2, and then we did that chemistry lab. So the chemistry review lab, there's material up for that on Canvas as well. So I think most people were able to be there and could participate, but if you weren't or didn't get the answers or aren't sure if you have the right answers, I put those on Canvas. So they're up for you. And then 3 and 5. So we did labs 3 and 5 last week. So those two are also on the practical. For lab 3, you want to know the stages of mitosis, be able to identify them and know what happens in each stage, as well as that table 3.1, which is the organelles. So the organelles and their functions, that's all that's in lab 3, along with mitosis. And then lab 5 was the tough one. So that was the histology, the tissues lab. You'll want to be able to identify the different types of tissues that are listed in your lab manual, and either identify them by slides or identify them by if I describe them in words. So like, let's see, what would be a good example? Branch cells with striations would be like cardiac muscle, for example. I would give you a little bit more detail than that, but long cells that are branched at the ends and they have striations in them, that's a good indicator that it's cardiac muscle. And thankfully on Wednesday, well, let's see, I don't know what Dr. Schmitz is actually doing. I don't know if she's getting into tissues yet, but in my class at least, we'll be talking about tissues in lecture on Wednesday. So hopefully that'll help clear some stuff up. But you don't need to worry about the functions or locations for the different types of tissues that are listed in your lab manual. Just be able to identify them. Let's see, what else? So for those of you who came in, well, actually one person came and left. Never mind. So yeah, I'll be putting that study guide up. In addition to the study guide, I've put the answers to the lab review sheets for all the labs that you've done. So labs 1 and 2, 3 and 5. Did I put 5 up? I think I put them all up. Those all should be on Canvas. Let me check. So you should have access to all of those, which would be, those are great study tools for the practical. Let me just double check. And if I don't have all those up, I'll get them up. So if you look under modules in your BLAB2100 course, oh, I haven't put them up yet for labs 3 and 5. So I'll put those review sheet answers, basically the sheets at the end of all the questions at the end of each lab. I'll put those up on Canvas for you. So you can see those for labs 3 and 5. And then I do have them up for 1 and 2. And then the chemistry lab wasn't from that lab manual, so there is nothing for that. Okay, so the rest of this time, considering we're not in person, I figured it would be helpful to kind of talk. Oh, Sorry, there's a couple chats that I'm missing. Yes. Yeah. Um, Hope, you can just email me. And Ashley, thank you for emailing me. Yep, just email me if you have a picture of those review sheets. That's fine. All right. So Matthew, I see you just showed up. If you did any of the review sheets, you can email me a picture of them. Email them as soon as possible so I have a timestamp at least. And know you didn't do them right now. And so yeah, so lab 6, which is planned for today, for anyone who missed this, we're not going to worry about it. We're not going to worry about the integumentary system lab. All that material will be covered in lecture. So it's a good one to kind of have to skip. Okay, so the practical setup for next week. So basically the rest of this time, it shouldn't take that long, is just going to be devoted to kind of preparing you guys for the practical, knowing what to expect. And then I have some practice questions so you can kind of see what the setup will be like. So feel free to ask me questions as we go. I might answer them or get to them. But I'll keep the chat open so I can, or you can, interrupt me, obviously. So yeah, just ask questions for anything I'm not covering. I'm a little bit unfocused today. Okay, so the practical next week. You guys, you're not going to be moving from station to station. You'll do that in the next practical. But all the questions will be on the screen. So on the TV screen in the lab, it'll be PowerPoint. It will, for the most part, not be multiple choice. So it makes it a little bit tougher than say a lecture exam. So it's mostly fill in the blanks or kind of matching. And I'll show you what I mean by the matching in just a minute. So you'll need to know the material pretty well. It's a lot less material than you have in lecture. So hopefully that makes it somewhat approachable. And you'll have, let's see, what do I have it set up for? Probably, well, depending on the question, some of them you just fill in one blank. So those you'll probably get 30 seconds for. Some of the more involved ones where you're labeling different parts of the body, like 5 or 6 different parts, I'll give you about a minute or minute and a half. And then there will be 50 total points. So some slides will have, 5 or 6 points on them if you're labeling 5 or 6 different parts of the body, for example. Some slides will just be 1 point if there's only one fill in the blank that you have to do. So it just depends. But each blank essentially is going to be a point, and it'll add up to 50 points for the whole practical. We should get done within about 30 to 35 minutes with the first round. So I'll play the slideshow the whole way through. You can make stars next to any questions that you want to see again. And we should have time, since we'll be done within 30 to 35 minutes. There should be at least 30 or 25 or 30 minutes to go back and look at any questions that you want to see again. So if it's going a little too fast for you for some of them, that's fine. We can go back and look at them, and it'll probably be the same ones that a lot of people want to see anyway, again. Let's see. If you need a periodic table, I'll provide one for you. I'm trying to think of anything else that I'm missing. Do you guys have any questions so far? I'm going to get to the practice question slideshow in just a second. So that might bring up some more questions, but any questions? Okay, nothing so far. So let's go to, am I in the right spot? Yeah. Here's the practice questions. So I'll post these on Canvas as well. The study guide along with the practice questions and the labs 3 and 5 review sheet answers. So I'll do all of that after we are done with this meeting. So let me pull these up, and I'm just going to run through them. You can try to answer them if you want to, like on a sheet of paper. I'll have an answer sheet for you, so it'll be set up correctly for the questions as I'm asking them. So it'll be the appropriate amount of lines, basically. So it should be pretty clear what I'm asking and what I want you to answer. So I'm going to share my screen and then start this slideshow. So this is what I'll post on Canvas for you. So I think there's 15 questions here. I tried to hit each of the labs to kind of give you an idea of the types of questions I'll ask for each lab and overall. And then I'll kind of hint, or I'll let you know how much time I would give you for each of these slides as we go through them. You'll kind of get a good idea of that. Okay, so this is a question I ask often. So I'll just show you, basically, I'll point to different parts of a diagram, a person in anatomical position, or a drawing of a person in anatomical position. And then you'll have to name each of the lettered areas. Oh, and I did put the answers to all these questions. I guess you probably have to download the PowerPoint file, but if you download the PowerPoint file, the answers are in the notes section below each slide. So you have the answers for these as well. Or you will once I get them posted to Canvas. Okay, so you will definitely have some kind of question like this. This is from Lab 1, where you have to learn, or you had to name the different regions of the body. So that was one of the first things we did in lab. So here we would have, I guess I could go ahead and answer them for you as a review. So for something like this, I'll give you a word bank because there's so many different options. You won't have a word bank for every question. So I'll show you the ones, like the examples of questions where you won't have a word bank, but there's so many options for these lettered areas. Well, there's only one option for each lettered area, but there's a lot of different words that could be put in there. So I'll kind of narrow it down for you so you can pick from these. So if you've been answering, hopefully you know some of these. So A, that's the chest area, that's going to be thoracic. B, that's the neck, that's cervical. Oh, I can't see over here. C, that's the upper arm, so that's going to be brachial. D, I'm pointing to the wrist, that's carpal. And E, the back of the knee, is popliteal. So if at any point you don't know what these questions, like something like this, what is being pointed at, obviously ask me now or during the practical. Okay, so you will have a question like this. So learn those different body regions. And then you'll probably have a question about the body cavities as well. Basically, all the questions I've included here, you'll have something similar to them. So hopefully this really helps you prepare for the practical. So these are all the body cavities, and then the ones with the black circle around them, those letters, those are the ones that I want you to name. And again, because there's a lot of different options and the spelling can be really difficult, I put the word bank here essentially. So this body cavity is going to be, that's an easy one. It's cranial. This M, that's this red part here, and there's two of them. So those are where the lungs are housed. That makes them the pleural cavities. This one here in between the pleural cavities is the pericardial. That's around the heart. H. H is specifically this part here. So minus, is that an I? Yeah, so not this region. So O is going to include both of those, these two. That's going to make it the abdominopelvic. H is just the abdominal. So make sure, this is the exact same diagram from your lab manual. So make sure you know that difference. So there's some brackets here, know what these brackets are. And I can't remember off the top of my head what they call this whole, it might be thoracic. Yeah. No, this is a thoracic cavity. I can't remember what they call this whole upper body part. So yeah, the cavities you definitely want to know, and you want to know that this is the ventral body cavity, and then this is going to be the dorsal. So the dorsal is on the back, the yellow colored pieces, and then ventral is going to be the anterior, the front of the body. All right. Question 3, this is the abdominal regions, and this is kind of an applied question. So I said, if a surgeon were to perform surgery on the epigastric region of a patient, which of the numbered regions would he or she be operating on? So epi means on top of, gastric means stomach, if that helps at all. So that's going to be number 2. So the epigastric region is this upper middle region of the abdomen. So you want to know what each of these are called. So that would be a good test, a good quiz for yourself. So you want to know the names for all 9 of these abdominal regions. And here, so I didn't, oh, well, never mind. I was going to say, I didn't give you a word bank, but you didn't have to write a word. You just had to write a number. But if I did ask you, say, what is number 2? I would give you the word bank. I'd give you basically the 9 options to choose from. Okay, question 4. So yeah, this is just to fill in the blank with the directional term. The nose is what to the ear? So the nose compared to the ear. So you're talking kind of middle of the body versus the side of the body. So that means the nose is going to be medial to the ear. And that's really the only option out of these that are listed. But again, I gave you a word bank, so hopefully that's helpful. So you definitely want to know those directional terms. I did put both dorsal and posterior and ventral and anterior, since those are kind of interchangeable. And then the planes. So this is just one of the 4 different types of planes that you learned. So transverse is going to be this plane that's basically cutting a body straight across in half parallel to the floor. That's going to be transverse. Make sure you know what median, sagittal, and frontal planes look like as well. So you'll notice so far, you pretty much get a word bank with most questions. There's a few coming up that won't have them, but for the most part, I understand that spelling can be tough and there's a lot of terms. So you'll mostly get a word bank. Okay, now into the organ systems. The following organs belong to what organ system, basically? The esophagus and then the small and large intestines. I consider that a pretty easy one. That's going to be the digestive system. So hopefully small and large intestine at least indicates to you, okay, definitely something to do with digestion. But I listed all of the organ systems down here. So make sure you know the functions as well as the main organs involved in the different organ systems. All right, another organ system. This organ system is responsible for filtering the blood and ridding the body of nitrogen-containing wastes. So I consider that one a little bit more difficult, at least than digestive. That's going to be the urinary system. So urinary system takes nitrogenous wastes out of our body. It filters our blood, takes nitrogenous wastes out of our body. Okay. Even here, I gave you a word bank. So as this goes into the chemistry lab now. So as the pH of a substance decreases, so we're going down on the pH scale, the concentration of the hydrogen ions does what? And this was basically a huge part of that chemistry lab that we talked about, the weird negative log aspect of the pH scale. So as a pH goes down, that means it's getting more acidic. That means the concentration of hydrogen ions is going up. So it's increasing. The pH and the hydrogen ion concentration are opposite. They go in opposite directions of each other. So make sure you have that relationship clearly understood. All right, more in chemistry. So now I'm talking about a metal and non-metal. So we learned what metals do and what non-metals typically do with regard to electrons. So potassium, a metal, bonds with chlorine, a non-metal, to form an ionic bond. Based on what you know about how metals and non-metals either accept or donate electrons, which of the atoms would become the cation in this ionic bond? So this isn't just asking, you have to know which one is going to accept the electrons and then what a cation is. So this is kind of asking a lot in one question. So as a reminder, and this is something you definitely want to know, metals are going to donate electrons. So they're going to typically get rid of electrons because they usually have only a couple of electrons in their outer energy level. So it's easier for them to donate those than take on a bunch more to fill up their valence shell. So that means potassium is going to donate, and that means it becomes a cation. So it becomes, oh, that's part B. Would that atom be positively or negatively charged? So even if you didn't know which one was donating the electrons, at least you might know that a cation is positively charged. So you could still get B without knowing A. So potassium is going to be the cation, and it will be positively charged. Question 10, during which stage of mitosis? So on to lab 3 in your lab manual. During which stage of mitosis do the sister chromatids separate and migrate to opposite ends of the cell? So you have 4 choices here, and this is one where I don't give you a word bank, you'll notice. So you should definitely kind of by heart be able to recite the 4 stages of mitosis: prophase, metaphase, anaphase, and telophase, and know what happens in each of them. So sister chromatids are separating during anaphase. And you should know how to spell those. And yeah, you definitely shouldn't need a word bank for the 4 stages of mitosis. I will not give you a word bank for that. All right, that's pretty straightforward. And then I'll show you, this is really blurry, sorry. You can kind of still tell what it is. I'll show you some slides of mitosis probably and ask you what stage that cell is in. So this would be, again, you don't get a word bank. So the chromosomes lining up along the midline of the cell here, that is going to be metaphase. Okay, so for these last 2, I probably won't give you as much time as I would have for some of the others because they're pretty quick and you have 4 options that you should kind of almost know right away. So those will probably be 30-second slides. Like the body cavities one, you'll definitely get at least a minute for that. Okay, now question 12. So this is another one where you just have to list tissues. You don't get a word bank for this. So the 4 categories of tissue, so those 4 main ones you should know without me having to give you a word bank. Some of the subcategories I'll give you options for. So just know the 4 stages of mitosis without a word bank and the 4 main categories of tissues. Conveniently, that's 2 groups of 4. So this is going to be epithelial, connective, muscle, and nervous tissues. So those are the 4 big categories of tissues. And that's something you should definitely know. That should be an easy recall kind of answer. You should have those down by heart. Okay, so here's an example of where, yes, I want a very specific kind of epithelial tissue, so I give you a word bank for the different options here. So I told you this is epithelial tissue. Hopefully you can tell that on your own, but there is only one layer of cells. Here's the basement membrane that they're attached to. They're lining this open cavity. And the nuclei are pretty big in the cell. They're not flattened. They're also not really tall column shaped. So this is going to make them, the fact that there's only one layer, you can cross out the stratifieds. So this is going to be some kind of simple epithelia because we only have one layer of cells attached to a basement membrane. And then as long as you can tell the shape is cuboidal, and that really big nucleus is a really great indicator that this is cuboidal. So really big nucleus compared to the overall size of the cell. So this is simple cuboidal epithelial tissue. These are going to be some of the harder questions when I give you a slide and ask you to identify a tissue or identify a tissue based on a word description, which I think I don't know if I put one in here like that. Okay. There we go, I did. Here's an example of, say, a word description that you should be able to pick out what kind of tissue it is. So which of the following tissue types, this is actually multiple choice, consists of long cells with striations and multiple nuclei. So the only long cells we looked at were muscle cells. All the others are very normal kind of cells. Muscle cells are all really long, some longer than others. Striations, so if there's striations, you know you can cross out. Did I put it on here? I didn't. So if there's striations, so you know it's not smooth muscle. I'm surprised I didn't put that as an option. And then multiple nuclei. So skeletal muscle is the one that has multiple nuclei and striations. So in addition to studying images, you also want to be able to kind of list characteristics of these tissues that'll help you answer these types of questions. So this is going to be skeletal muscle. Okay. And then the last question I have, what type of tissue is shown below? So hopefully this is a really easy one. This is nervous tissue. So with nervous tissue, whenever you see these weird long kind of arms coming off the main part of a cell, that's a neuron. And those are only found in nervous tissue. So you have these main neurons and then these tiny little cells dotting the matrix around it. So that's going to be nerve tissue. Just look for the neuron. It's a very distinctive shape. Okay. And that's the whole, that's the review or the practice questions that I wanted to give you. Not only does it help you, it gives you an idea of what kind of questions I'll be asking, as well as hopefully that sort of helped you review some of the material. So what questions do you guys have about the practical? What am I forgetting? Nothing? Okay, well, that kind of wraps it up. Like I said, I'm going to post a bunch of stuff to Canvas. Go into the modules section of Canvas. That's where all of this information will be, and it'll help you study for the practical. If you do have questions, obviously email me or I'll see you in class or during office hours. So I should be back on campus tomorrow. All right. Thanks again for being understanding. Oh. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, Chase, I didn't ask about cartilage. So I didn't cover nearly all of the material. There will be questions about cartilage. So any and all tissues are fair game. Good question. Not more, like, I don't know if you mean more questions. Yep, you're welcome. More than other types of tissues, not really, but yes, there will be questions about cartilage. Anything else before we go? All right. Email me with anything else or drop by my office during office hours or talk to me after class. All right. Thank you guys. I'll see you soon.